My sister said I had two choices: give her half of the 60K our aunt left me, or be cut off from the entire family. I chose a third option. I walked away and used that money to build something she could never take from me. Now, she sits quietly in the back of a packed auditorium, watching me speak to hundreds of women about healing purpose and power. She looks like she wants to say something, but I've already said it all without ever needing her permission. I was never the favorite child, not even close. Growing up, my sister Olivia always had this shine to her. She was louder, prettier, more outgoing. The kind of girl who could charm a room full of strangers before I'd even finished a sentence. And my parents loved that. They adored her confidence, her ambition, her presence. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the bookworm. The one who stayed in her room, drawing or writing stories, while Olivia was out winning science fairs or leading student government. I didn't mind, really. I liked being invisible. It felt safe. Until the day it didn't. Our family wasn't rich, but we were comfortable. Dad was an accountant. Mom worked in HR, and Olivia and I shared a room until she left for college. She went Ivy League full scholarship. Everyone beamed with pride. There were banners, balloons posts all over Facebook. When I got into a state college 3 years later, there was a small dinner and a good job from Dad. That was it. But I told myself it didn't matter. I didn't need applause. I just wanted to build a life that made sense for me, something meaningful, even if it wasn't glamorous. The one person who ever really saw me was Aunt Margaret. She was my mom's older sister. Kind of an oddball, honestly. She never married, never had kids, lived alone in a big old house with a garden full of herbs and wildflowers. But to me, she was magic. She taught me how to make tea from chamomile and peppermint, how to journal my feelings without judgment, how to sit in silence and just breathe. She didn't need me to be loud or bright or popular. I could just be. Every summer since I was 10, I spent 2 weeks at her place. We'd read poetry on the porch, watch the moon rise, and talk about everything. My fears, my dreams, the way I felt, like I didn't belong in my own family. She never tried to fix me. She just listened. And that was everything. I was 29 when she passed. It wasn't sudden she had cancer. And we all knew her time was limited, but even so, it shattered me. I visited her every weekend toward the end. I held her hand while she slept. I fed her soup. I cried quietly in her bathroom so she wouldn't see. After the funeral, her lawyer called. He said she'd left behind a will and that she wanted to speak with me privately before anything was shared. I remember sitting in that small office, heart pounding, when he slid the envelope across the table. It said, "To my Chloe, because you always listened when no one else did." Inside was a letter and a check, $60,000. I stared at it for a long time, thinking it was a mistake. But the lawyer confirmed that Aunt Margaret had left me her savings. Not to be split, not to be shared. Just me. In the letter she wrote, "Use this to take care of yourself. I hope you choose something that heals you." I cried for hours that night, not just for the loss, but for the love she'd shown me one last time, even in death. At first, I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to hold the moment close, just for myself. But secrets don't stay secret in families like mine. Olivia found out a few weeks later, probably from Mom, who'd asked if I got anything in the will. I should have lied, but I told her the truth. She went silent, dead silent. Then she laughed, not kindly, not warmly. It was a cold, bitter scoff. Wait, she said. She left you 60 grand. Just you. I nodded. I still remember the way she looked at me, like I'd stolen something from her, like I'd cheated. That's not fair, she said. We're family. You have to split it. You have to. That money isn't just yours. I reminded her gently that it was. Aunt Margaret had made a choice. It wasn't about favoritism. It was about connection. Olivia hadn't visited Aunt Margaret in years. Not once during her illness. Not once during hospice. She didn't care. All she saw was the number, 60,000. And then came the ultimatum. If you don't give me half, she said, you're dead to me. Don't expect to be invited to Christmas, Thanksgiving, weddings, nothing. At first, I thought she was bluffing. We were sisters. We had shared bunk beds and birthday cakes and heartbreaks. She couldn't possibly mean it, but she did. The next few days were filled with messages, some angry, some manipulative, all exhausting. Olivia sent long texts demanding justice, claiming I was betraying the family, insisting that Aunt Margaret never would have done this if she'd been in her right mind. Then came the guilt trips. You know Mom and Dad are heartbroken, right? They can't believe you'd do this to us. $60,000 isn't just money. It's a symbol of how selfish you've become. It's not too late to make this right. I ignored the first few. I thought maybe she just needed time to cool off. Maybe grief was clouding her judgment, but it didn't stop. If anything, it escalated. Soon, I was getting calls from my mother too. Honey, I don't want to take sides, she said, her voice tight and formal, like she was reading off a script. But Olivia's not wrong. That inheritance should have been shared. You two are sisters. She didn't leave it to both of us, I said, holding back tears. I know, but maybe she should have. Those words cut deeper than I expected. Not just because they undermined Aunt Margaret's last wishes, but because they revealed something I had always feared. Even in death, my value to this family was negotiable. I thought about writing back, defending myself, sending screenshots of the will, reminding them that Aunt Margaret had made her choice fully, freely, and consciously. But I knew it wouldn't matter. This wasn't about legality. It wasn't even about the money. It was about control, about family expectations, about me stepping out of the box they'd carefully crafted for me, the quiet, obedient, overlooked daughter, and doing something that didn't require their approval. That was the real betrayal. The final blow came 2 weeks later. I was on my way home from the grocery store when I saw it, a group photo on Facebook. Olivia's birthday dinner. Our entire extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, all gathered at our parents' house. Balloons, cake, matching t-shirts. I wasn't invited. No one had said a word. No call. No text. No warning. Just silence. I sat in my car for 15 minutes, staring at that post heart, pounding like a drum in my chest. I zoomed in on the faces. Some of them had hugged me at the funeral. Some had cried on my shoulder. Some had said, "We're always here for you." Now they were smiling in a photo I didn't know was being taken, one I wasn't meant to see. I didn't cry right away. I just felt hollow, like a part of me had been erased. The next day, I confronted my mom, calmly, over the phone. Why didn't anyone tell me about the party? Her answer was ice cold. Well, we assumed you wouldn't want to come, given the tension. I paused. So, no one thought to ask. She didn't respond, and that's when it hit me. They weren't punishing me. They were erasing me. Olivia had drawn a line in the sand. She made it clear that unless I gave her half the inheritance, I was out. And the family, my own family, had chosen her side. Maybe it was easier. Olivia was louder, more charismatic, more present. She brought energy to a room. I brought quiet. And quiet doesn't win loyalty. But underneath the grief, something strange started to grow clarity. For the first time in my life, I saw it all for what it was. The favoritism, the emotional manipulation, the way I was always expected to shrink myself for someone else's comfort. I had spent years trying to belong in a family that only loved me when I was useful or invisible. So, I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight for a seat at their table anymore. I would build my own. I withdrew the $60,000 from the account, transferred a portion into savings, and used the rest to pay off my small debts, credit card car loan, a lingering medical bill. Then I started researching therapy certifications, mental health workshops, trauma-informed coaching programs. I had always been drawn to healing work, probably because I needed it so badly myself. Aunt Margaret's voice echoed in my mind, "Use this to take care of yourself." So that's what I did. I enrolled in an intensive course in integrative wellness and emotional health. It wasn't easy. I was rusty at studying, and imposter syndrome hit hard. Every time I walked into class, I felt like someone would tap me on the shoulder and say, "You don't belong here." But I kept going. I journaled every day. I meditated. I cried. I dug deep into old wounds, the ones that told me I wasn't enough, that I had to earn love, that silence was safer than speaking up. I sat with those stories and rewrote them one by one. Meanwhile, I started sharing small pieces of my journey online. First just quotes, then reflections, then short videos about healing family wounds. Nothing fancy, just raw honesty. To my surprise, people listened. Then they responded. Then they shared. One woman messaged me, "I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." Another said, "Your story gave me the courage to finally walk away from a toxic relationship." It was small at first, but it was growing. And for the first time, so was I. At first, I thought I'd just quietly move on with my life. Focus on the healing work. Keep sharing my story in small pieces online. Maybe build a tiny community of like-minded women who'd been through something similar. But things didn't stay quiet for long. Olivia found my blog. I don't know exactly how. Maybe a mutual friend shared a post, or maybe she searched my name out of curiosity. But one day, I woke up to an email from her. No greeting, no signature. Just 5 words, "So this is your revenge." I remember just staring at the screen, trying to process the tone. It wasn't even angry. It was offended. As if me talking about my healing, about my own experience, was an act of aggression. And maybe to her it was. Because in her world, silence was politeness, and politeness was loyalty. Speaking my truth, even without naming her, felt like betrayal. I didn't respond. I didn't want to explain myself anymore, especially not to someone who had already decided who I was. But she didn't stop there. Within days, I noticed odd comments on my posts. Anonymous ones. Fake victim. Spoiled girl with a savior complex. Bet she didn't say how she stole the money. I didn't want to believe it was her. But some of the language was too specific references to family dinners, old stories I'd never posted about publicly. It was her or someone close to her. For a few hours, I considered shutting the blog down, going dark, disappearing. Then I remembered what one of my instructors had said in class. When people are committed to misunderstanding you, it's not your job to educate them. It's your job to protect your peace. So instead of hiding, I set boundaries. I blocked the accounts. I filtered comments. I stopped checking my inbox every 5 minutes, and I kept writing. Each post was like a stitch in an old wound. Not perfect, not immediate, but healing. Then, something unexpected happened. I got invited to speak. It was a local wellness collective, small, mostly women-owned businesses and practitioners offering yoga counseling energy work. One of the coordinators had followed my blog and reached out. We're hosting a weekend event on emotional boundaries. Would you like to lead a session? My first instinct was to say no. I wasn't a public speaker. I didn't have credentials yet. I wasn't an expert. But then I thought about the women who had written to me, the ones who said my words made them feel seen. Maybe I didn't need to be perfect. Maybe I just needed to be honest. So I said yes. The event was held in a converted barn on the outskirts of town, white string lights, herbal tea stations, lavender sachets on every chair. It was peaceful, warm, and intimate. My workshop was called Speaking Through the Silence, Healing After Family Estrangement. 15 women showed up. 15. I thought it would be 3. I shared my story carefully, respectfully, without naming names. I spoke about losing my aunt, the inheritance, the fallout, the feeling of being erased by people who once loved you. And then I talked about what came after the guilt, the therapy, the slow, stubborn reclaiming of my voice. Afterward, we sat in a circle. One woman said she hadn't spoken to her brother in 10 years because of a similar fight. Another said her mother still guilted her every Christmas for setting boundaries. Another said, I didn't even know this kind of pain had a name. We cried, we laughed, we passed around tissues and dark chocolate and held space for each other. That night, I felt something shift. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt purposeful. Like maybe Aunt Margaret's gift wasn't just about the money. Maybe it was about giving me a path one I wouldn't have chosen if life hadn't broken me open. But Olivia wasn't done. A few weeks later, I got a text from a cousin, someone I hadn't spoken to since the birthday party I wasn't invited to. Hey, just wanted to let you know that Olivia's been talking about suing you. Says you defamed her in your little blog. Be careful. My stomach dropped. Sue me for what I hadn't mentioned her name once. I hadn't accused her of anything beyond what actually happened. The blog wasn't about her. It was about me, my pain, my healing, my truth. But fear crept in anyway. What if she could twist this? What if she wanted to drag me through court just to make a point? She came from a world of debate teams and mock trials and winning at any cost. I came from journals and poems and quiet strength. She could crush me legally speaking, or at least make my life miserable trying. I consulted a lawyer, pro bono thankfully. She read through my content and said, "You're fine. This is clearly opinion, not defamation. If she sues, she'll lose and she knows it." But still, I couldn't sleep for a week. My anxiety spiked. I second-guessed every post. I replayed old arguments in my head like courtroom cross-examinations. Then came the email from Olivia. Subject line, "Let's end this." It was longer than anything she'd written before. Measured, articulate, emotionally charged. She claimed I had weaponized Aunt Margaret's memory, that I had humiliated the family, that while she wasn't technically planning to sue, she wanted me to strongly reconsider the narrative I was putting out into the world. I almost deleted it, but one sentence stopped me cold. "You always had a way of making yourself the victim. It's what you do best." I stared at those words for what felt like hours, and then something inside me broke, or maybe clicked, because I realized that sentence wasn't about this moment. It was about every moment. Every time I tried to speak up as a kid and was told I was too sensitive, Every time I cried and was told I was being dramatic. Every time I disagreed and was called difficult. I had spent my entire life being afraid of that label victim. But maybe that wasn't the worst thing I could be. Maybe the worst thing was letting people hurt me and then letting them decide how I was allowed to talk about it. So I wrote back, calm, clear, no drama. Oh, Olivia, I'm not going to apologize for healing. I'm not going to erase my experience to make you more comfortable. Aunt Margaret gave me that inheritance to take care of myself. That's exactly what I'm doing. I wish you peace, Chloe. I hit send and blocked her number. That was the last time we spoke directly, but the healing didn't stop there. In fact, it accelerated. I got more speaking invites. I finished my certification. I launched a group coaching program for women navigating toxic family dynamics. It wasn't huge, but it was real. It mattered, and people started showing up. Women from all over the country joined Zoom calls where we talked about boundaries and guilt and grief. We wrote letters we'd never send. We practiced saying no out loud until it didn't burn anymore. The blog gained traction. So did the videos. One of them, a short reel about how to let go of people who only love the version of you they can control, went viral. Like really viral. Suddenly, I was getting messages from podcast hosts, mental health advocates, even therapists who said, "What you're doing is important. Keep going." I felt like I had found my voice, not the one my family wanted, but the one I was born with. And then something happened I never expected. One day, during a panel discussion, at a local conference, I looked up from the stage and saw her, Olivia, sitting in the back row, alone. Her eyes were puffy. Her arms were crossed. But she was there. I kept speaking, not to her, to the room. But part of me was shaking inside. After the panel, I stepped outside for air. A few people came to thank me. A few asked for hugs. I felt grounded strong. Then I saw her again by the parking lot. She walked toward me, slowly. And then she stopped, just a few feet away. She didn't say anything. No apology. No accusation. Just tears. She nodded once like she wanted to say something but couldn't. And I for once said nothing at all, because in that moment I realized I didn't need closure from her. I had created it for myself. The moment I saw Olivia in the back row of that conference panel, something shifted in me, not out of fear or even hope for reconciliation, but a deeper awareness that the roles had reversed. I wasn't chasing her approval anymore. She was quietly, perhaps even subconsciously, seeking mine. For years, I had walked in her shadow, the brilliant, decisive older sister with the perfect resume and sharp tongue. But now I was the one standing on the stage. I was the one being listened to. Not because I shouted louder, but because I finally spoke with purpose. A week after the conference, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Just my name in Olivia's unmistakable cursive. Inside a simple envelope and a handwritten letter. Chloe, I don't know if this will change anything. Maybe it shouldn't. But I wanted to say, I read your blog. I've watched some of your videos. I still don't agree with how everything happened between us. But I see now that I didn't understand your pain because I never let myself feel my own. Aunt Margaret loved you. That was always clear. And maybe you were the one who truly knew her. I've spent so long being angry at you for getting something I thought I deserved. But now I realize you didn't just get an inheritance. You earned something I never did her trust. I don't know what comes next. I'm not asking for forgiveness. But I wanted you to know I'm listening now. I stared at the letter for a long time, not because I didn't believe it, but because in a way, it felt like the final act of something much bigger than a family dispute. It was karma quiet and understated, a reckoning that didn't scream. It whispered. She had tried to shame me into giving up something that was never hers to claim. And in the end, what I built from that, the healing, the growth, the strength, turned out to be far more powerful than any check could buy. Aunt Margaret had left me $60,000. That money was long gone now, spent on therapy training building my platform from the ground up. What remained, though, was the return on that emotional investment, my career, my self-worth, and the hundreds of women I was now helping find their voices too. My next big step was hosting my own event, not just a panel or a workshop, but a full-day healing seminar. I called it Unlearning Silence, a Day for Women, Reclaiming Their Stories. I booked a modest but elegant venue, a community arts center downtown, with high ceilings, warm lighting, and breakout rooms. I poured everything I had into curating the experience, from handwritten welcome notes to curated sound baths, from trauma-informed yoga to group journaling prompts. The tickets sold out within days, 100 women from over 20 states. Many of them had followed my blog from the very beginning. Some brought their daughters. Others came alone, saying I didn't even know why I was coming. I just knew I had to. That day, something sacred unfolded. We cried together, laughed through hard memories, wrote letters to our younger selves, and burned old belief systems in a symbolic fire ritual in the courtyard. And then came the closing circle. I stood in the center of the room holding the mic. My voice was steady now, not because I had no fear, but because I had walked through it. I told them the story of how it all started, about the inheritance, the accusations, the disownment, and the choice I made not to fight, not to beg, not to fold, but to transform. I could feel the emotion rising in the room, women nodding, others wiping tears. And then at the very back I saw her again. Olivia, not hiding this time, sitting upright, eyes wide, glassy. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but energetically, like she had finally set down the weight she'd been carrying for years. After the session ended, people gathered to chat and take photos. I posed with a few women who said this event had changed their lives, that they finally felt seen, that they were going to speak to their daughters, their mothers, their selves with more love. I stepped aside to grab some water and found Olivia standing nearby. She didn't speak right away, just looked at me. Then quietly, "You built something real." I nodded. I did. There was a long silence. She looked down, then back up. "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No." She took a shaky breath. "You could have dragged me. You never did." "No," I said, "because dragging you wouldn't have healed me. Becoming someone I could respect, that did." She nodded again, this time with wet eyes. And then she whispered, almost to herself, "I'm sorry I didn't understand you sooner." I placed a hand on my chest and said I didn't do this for you to understand me. But I'm glad you finally did. She didn't ask to stay, didn't try to rejoin my life, but she lingered a moment longer, then quietly walked out the door. I never saw her again in person. But a few months later, I received a donation to my new nonprofit initiative, an anonymous one, for exactly $60,000, the same amount Aunt Margaret had given me, the same amount that started it all. I didn't need a note. I knew where it came from, and I knew what it meant. Sometimes revenge doesn't come as a dramatic takedown. Sometimes it looks like rising so far beyond the harm that the person who tried to bury you ends up planting your legacy instead. It's funny how healing doesn't always arrive the way you expect. You think it'll come with an apology, or a grand gesture, or a reunion wrapped in soft music and forgiveness. But sometimes, healing is simply waking up one morning, making your coffee, and realizing you're not angry anymore. I no longer carry Olivia's words like anchors in my chest. I no longer replay our arguments in my head, searching for better comebacks or softer landings. I don't need closure from her because I've built it within myself. That $60,000, $1,000. It was never just money. It was a seed. And what I chose to plant with it has grown into something far bigger than Aunt Margaret or Olivia or even me. It's grown into a community, a movement, a quiet revolution of women choosing to break cycles to speak to be. I still run the blog, still host retreats. I've been invited to speak at universities to consult on trauma-informed storytelling, to mentor young women finding their voice. The girl who once sat alone at a family barbecue, feeling like a thief for receiving love, is now someone others turn to for strength. And sometimes, when I sit at my desk late at night writing another post, I light one of Aunt Margaret's old candles, the lavender kind she always kept in her study. I close my eyes, and I swear I can hear her voice. Good girl. You didn't give it back. You gave it purpose. So no, I didn't return the inheritance. I turned it into something better. I turned it into me.